In Manhunt, your character, Cash, is trapped within the confines of the fictional Carson City. He's then forced to enact heinous acts of violence against other criminals, subjecting them to untold savagery at the whims of the director, whose sick urges can only be satisfied with brutality most depraved. In Condemned Criminal Origins, the protagonist, Ethan, finds himself in the same predicament as Cash, only there's no one directing his actions or urging him to kill, making the violence purely for the sake of survival. Similar to Cash, Ethan doesn't fight because he likes to. He does it because it's what he's forced to do. For him, it's either kill or be killed. Come to think of it, not many video game protagonists, if any, explicitly state that they actually enjoy maiming and killing their enemies. But what if they do? What if your protagonist is just as sick and depraved as the enemies you face? Drawing inspiration from the aforementioned video games, Butcher's Creek is a first-person horror game with a relentlessly suffocating atmosphere and a razor-sharp focus on brutal melee combat. Developed by David Szymanski, the events of the game take place in the same universe as many of his other creations, most notably Iron Lung, Scroll Stapler, and The Pony Factory, all games that start off innocuously but gradually devolve into the realm of incomprehensible cosmic horror. So, accompany me as we venture into one deep dark corner of the world to face horrors most depraved and uncover truths most godforsaken. What is up, LobotomizeGang? Is the guy. You know, the guy who lies every time he's depressed. Did you know that I'm good friends with talk show host Conan O'Brien? And also actress Molly Gordon? And also actor Michael C. Hall? And also, here's a quick disclaimer. This is sort of a companion video to another one on my channel that covers this very same game. Only the other one is infinitely more unhinged and reflects what this channel supposedly is. But since Butcher's Creek is so good that I feel compelled to make another video on it where I will try to suppress the cacophony of voices screaming at me to not make another sexual euphemism. Success is not guaranteed though. Also, I figure it would be a nice change of pace to do something different once in a while, you know? Only it is not so much out of choice, but more a desperate attempt to resuscitate my channel that's looking like it has as much of a future as Jeffrey Dahmer's victims. So, remember to check out my other videos after this one to bring the channel back to life. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the story of Butcher's Creek. The game opens with cryptic lines of text referring to sinners. Many sinners. So many that the fact that they exist is a sin against existence itself. You are one such sinner who is drawn to Butcher's Creek in search of videotapes. Those of profound violence and uninhibited brutality. Snuff films. Upon starting the game, you are introduced to its main mechanics, picking up weapons and swinging them. These mechanics are then soon put to the test as you descend into the basement of this shack, coming across the first enemy who you dispose with unnerving ease. That didn't happen. As you explore the dark and foreboding dungeon, you come to learn that in order to save the game, the protagonist watches a snuff film, the implication being that he enjoys violence so much that it relaxes him, freeing his mind from his current predicament. He yearns for violence, to inflict it upon others. He thrives from the physical degradation of other human beings. And if there still somehow lingers any hint of doubt on your mind as to the corrupted nature of our main character, you come across this. You heal by taking pictures of blood, gore, and eventually brutalized viscera. The fresher the blood, the more health you recover. Because this is what happens when you don't have access to the internet. Scary indeed. Needless to say, our protagonist is not exactly a beacon of morality, which brings to mind the question of whether the cultists you've just murdered are equally as immoral. But no time to ponder though, because you're then ambushed and knocked out by said cultists, who bring you to the murder dungeon where the game truly starts. After an undetermined amount of time, you wake up naked, locked in a cage with nothing but a bucket, and flesh. Your flesh. The very flesh that these cultists plan to violate to the greatest extent. And they would have succeeded too had you not made a swift escape from captivity. Having your clothes taken means you have to be careful not to step on patches of broken glass scattered on the ground. Why you don't take the clothes from one of the enemies you've just murdered instead of running around with your dick and balls out is a question yet to be answered. But deep in my subconscious, I believe that your character deliberately chooses to be naked in order to be closer to the blood, to wallow in the filth and bask in the violence. Thematically, the nudity adds to the exploitation aesthetics the game is going for, where violence is the point and everything leading up to that point doesn't matter, whether it be sanity, safety, or decency. You still have your camera with you though, at your disposal should the need arise. Where the hell did you hide that camera? I pray to never find out. And you're gonna be using the thing a lot, because these grimy dungeons are filled with all manners of untold horror, splattered across the floor, all captured on tape for purposes undiscovered. Even though you don't get to witness these acts of depravity in person or on tape, you are still allowed a brief glimpse into them through the gory aftermath and the various notes scattered around the place.
Woman in there hasn't eaten for 3 days, so someone needs to get to her as soon as possible. Prescription? Split the eyes, peel the scalp.
Reading from some of these notes, you get to see inside the minds of these cultists and gauge what they really are like. Ultra-violence unimaginable to the sane mind made rational, profound brutality codified. These cultists talk about murder and torture like it's a normal everyday thing to do. They approach the subject as if talking about brushing their teeth or doing the laundry. They don't even consider it inhumane, but something that one just do, going so far as to establish a systematic approach to the torture. And it's exactly this casual attitude towards violence that makes these unhinged cultists so scary. To them, violence is just violence, blood is just blood, flesh is just flesh, and flesh is always on demand. And apparently so is my medication. But don't mistake this for violence just for the sake of violence. As revealed by one of the notes you discovered, the purpose of this torture dungeon and the tapes it produces goes far beyond the realm of normalcy. Somewhere deep within this labyrinthine substructure lies an otherworldly entity called the Watcher, to whom the tapes are sacrificed. Nobody has ever seen this Watcher yet, but the cultists acknowledge the entity's existence and seem to hold it in reverence, either out of fear or some other unholy reason. Of course, we do not yet know whether this Watcher is real or simply a figment of the cult's imagination, a scapegoat conjured forth by corrupted minds in order to justify the depraved production of torture tapes. Cursed with this foreboding knowledge, we descend further into the darkness, coming into contact with more cultists, more cages, and more instructions for torture.
Prescription? Clip the toes, free the spleen.
I gotta say, having no idea what or where this Watcher is really heightens the sense of paranoia. Given the nature of David Zemeckis's games, this thing could come out at us at any point in the game, so the lurking sense of unease never really dissipates, and everything after this point only serves to escalate the tension that is itself already palpable. And as if on cue, this point is illustrated as we reach the radio tower and make our way through this part of the forest. Now turn up the volume and experience for yourself. Never before have I felt so vulnerable. I now empathize with women much more deeply. Normally, I am the one doing the stalking. When I first played it, this section in the forest was so scary that I actually wanted to put myself back into danger rather than endure the tension a second longer. Even when I reached the light, I was still haunted by the fear of some monster jumping out at me from the abyssal woods. Compared to what was lurking behind those trees, I'd rather take a pipe up the ass from a cultist. Literally speaking. Well, metaphorically speaking. Oh shit. Let's just move on, okay? Welcome to the Magic Fairy Castle. This is where we skin the mean ones. And this is also where the game takes a turn from psychological horror to psychedelic terror. If you have watched the movie Mandy directed by Panos Cosmatos, then you will undoubtedly be able to draw many similarities between it and what Butcher's Creek has finally devolved into. I won't spoil the movie because it's a phenomenal work of art that merits your viewing experience. Just know that Mandy, along with Butcher's Creek's horror, both originate from the mundane only to descend into the psychedelic and, finally, reaching the cosmic. But all of that comes later, because now we must explore the Magic Fairy Castle. Here's a question. What do you get when you combine deranged cultists worshipping an eldritch entity that feeds off of violence with huge amounts of drugs? Well, you get this. you get Funny Twist Balloon Man.
You must twist him round and round and round and round to suspend with the block till the tackle volunteers scream of a childlike balloon.
Granted that this is so absurdly violent that it goes full circle and becomes hilarious. But I mean, should we, as human beings, really laugh at one of our kind being brutalized to the point of losing all resemblance of the human shape, literally turning into mush? What is worse is that vile acts of human torture like these are not too far from reality. Just play the Suicide Squad game and you'll know what I mean. That game truly makes you want to be a member of the Suicide Squad. As we explore the castle and fight our way through the enemies, we come into possession of a notebook depicting an event called the Crimson Communion between a Watcher and a mysterious figure named the Tooth Sower. According to the passage, written as if it was holy prophetic gospel. The Tooth Sower is somebody who comes as meat but is in fact a butcher. Quite obviously our main character, who will then meet the Watcher in a battle where the deity will ultimately prevail and be unleashed unto the world, bringing about its devastation. So this pretty much explains why the cultists are so hell-bent on stopping you. It is what their made-up religious teachings told them to. Should you, the Tooth Sower, ever reach the Watcher, there will be Armageddon. I find it funny that what is supposed to be their holy Bible is just a random notebook that you can pick up at a dollar store for... let me just look it up real quick. Oh my god, these cultists are worse than insane. They are financially irresponsible. Forget about murder cult, now this is true horror. But I digress. The fact that their gospel is written on a random notebook supports the notion that these cultists are just mentally unwell sociopaths looking for an excuse to torture people. Well, if you look deeply enough into it, this could also be a comment on the nature of religion. But this is a can of worms I refuse to open on this channel. Especially not now, since my numbers aren't high enough. So, subscribe to the channel and watch my videos to make the numbers go up. Take note that from this point on the video will contain spoilers for the rest of the game. There will be some flashing lights and intense color towards the end. So this is a word of precaution if you suffer from photosensitivity. Now let's move on, which might prove a bit tricky since this is where the game starts to incorporate some puzzle elements into its gameplay loop. See, similar to this channel, the Magic Fairy Castle appears to be perfectly mundane at first glance, but you quickly come to find out that it's only a facade that soon fades as you take the plunge and traverse the madness. You have to find a piece of the fireplace, then attach it here. This opens the door to the basement, upon entering which, you will notice a shift in the music, going from the ever-present creepy atmospheric ambience to a distorted grungy metal soundtrack. This is the first time when the atmosphere takes a backseat and the game just lets you throw down, giving you weapons in abundance, and even introducing environmental hazards to be leveraged against the enemies. Admittedly, this somewhat breaks the immersion to a small extent, especially when enemies hit the spinning saw thing, then get propelled in random directions, breaking their entire skeleton and the already established gritty atmosphere on impact, resulting in some unintended hilarity. That is, if you hadn't already found the relentless over-the-top brutality to be hilarious like I had, and have always had. The basement leads to an underground tunnel at the end of which lies what appears to be a nuclear power plant, as denoted by the puddle of radioactive material on the floor. It is worth noting that ever since you were kidnapped, you've come into frequent contact with these radioactive waste puddles that seems to be everywhere in Butcher's Creek, presumably originating from the aforementioned power plant. So this is the last piece of information of the enigma that we've been trying to decipher. The final piece of the deranged meat puzzle that we've been forced to stare at. It all makes sense now. Well, as much sense as a booty-ass naked guy running around beating people's teeth in with a hammer, and is thus called the Tooth Sower, can make, but is sense nonetheless. Okay, so the enemies are so insane, not only due to the inordinate amount of hard drugs they take, but also the constant exposure to the radiation that has gradually warped their mind and body, driving them to madness. The cultists, who were already crazy to begin with, come to Butcher's Creek only to be further corrupted by the radiation without their knowledge, physically and mentally metamorphosed into something much more sinister, compelled by the urge to torture as well as the cosmic fear of an unknown primordial god, seemingly conjured up by their already shattered psyche. These zealots are willing to die for a cause considered by them to be righteous, even if it means sacrificing countless innocents for said cause. This would also explain the unhinged religious rambling, and also the skinless pony demon. Oh, I haven't told you that there's a skinless pony demon in this game. This had to have been one of the scariest jump scares that my very being has had the displeasure of being molested by in recent years. Mostly because it was so expertly orchestrated. The game takes its sweet time to let the atmosphere sink in, the creepy sound effects to do its work. And the unhinged crippling to paint a horrifying mental image.
I become the pony, for I wear the pony's head, with angel wings of skin disease, and hooves of Mephistopheles. There can be no more ponies once the ponied few are dead. So I will be the pony, for I wear the pony's head.
Only to then unleash all of that tension at your most vulnerable moment. Up to this point, it has been ingrained into your mind that using the camera means safety and respite. You use it when there's no enemies around, and taking pictures always means you get to heal up. But this jump scare flips that notion over its head, delivering a scare that, for lack of a better word, is scary as fuck, or pan-shittingly, as young people would say it. At least that's what I think they do, cause I consider myself neither young nor people. You emerge from the depths only to find yourself once again in another dark section of the woods, with only the dim light of a distant chapel to guide your path. And along with you emerges a single question. What happens with a guy wielding a giant axe walking through the woods in a thunderstorm when you surprise him? And just as this video has been getting progressively less tense and unsettling, so has the game, especially when you enter the chapel here, where all the tension unceremoniously dissipates as you discover that it has hilariously been converted into a strip club, complete with sleazy changing rooms where somebody's sister has done blow and has blown. I'm serious. There's even this announcement here telling people to recruit their female family members to become strippers. Of course, it's still disguised as serving a religious cause and working towards a higher purpose. How else would you be able to justify getting your rocks off to grandmother swinging her hips on stage? Again, I can't escape the sense that the game is subtly mocking religion here. But also again, I will not approach the subject. Especially now, because we have to take care of these cultists and read from their scripture. Similar to the ones before it, this passage ominously refers to the final confrontation between the Watcher and us. Only we learn that, in addition to supposedly suffering from defeat, we will also be exhibited, mated, and wrung out. This brings to mind the question, is David Szymanski off his meds? And also, what really is the Watcher? Up to this point, we've only thought of it as a violence-craving entity that can only be satisfied with videotapes depicting acts of torture, which the cult tries to provide. But the mention of these sexual acts, possibly violent, brings the Watcher's true intentions into question, provided that the thing actually exists in the first place. This is a question we will soon find the answer to. After clearing out the chapel, we need to solve this puzzle here. And as we once again descend into the dark tunnels, the theory of a power plant leaking radiation into the surrounding area ceases to be a theory. Funnily, it was only at this point that I truly realized that some of these cultists are wearing protective welding masks because they work in the power plant. However, despite the mystery of Butcher's Creek being gradually unveiled, there still are elements hinting at the supernatural. The biggest one being... invisible enemies? Yup, you heard me right. Look! See? There. These enemies literally come out of nowhere and challenge all established logical reasoning. What is going on?
What? What the fuck is this shit?
Are we literally descending into hell? Wait. So is all of this about drugs and radiation being the cause of madness? It's just bullshit? Huh? Well, it's a little too late to turn back now. There is only one thing on my mind right now, and I sense the game knows it too, as it breaks off the oppressive atmosphere with some much needed metal. It is time to run the gauntlet. And as we enact righteous slaughter upon our enemies, we subject them to the same violent end their victims were: depraved, forceful penetration, utmost merciless extermination, unceasing baleful exsanguination, dehumanizing, debaucherous brutalization to the absolute extent. Stepping on the mangled corpses of the defeated zealots, we emerge from the tunnels, triumphant, approaching the very precipice between Butcher's Creek and the cosmic unknown. This is it. The Watcher awaits. You can't out-freak the freak! Freaky! Let's take a step back and engage in some much called for retrospection. We, the player, you guys and I, have been doing the exact same thing we've accused the cultists of doing. We say that the drugs and radiation were the main cause of the cultists' gradual descent into madness, and that theirs is a religion made up in order to justify their twisted depravity. But in reality, it was us who have been using those excuses to deny the supernatural, to try and comprehend the incomprehensible. The Watcher has always existed, and deep down, we've always known that to be true. We just actively choose to deny it, because acknowledging the existence of such a being of pure evil would mean accepting the concept of evil truly has a form, and it has been made manifest. And with this unholy manifestation comes the realization that the already treacherous world in which we live contains misery infinitely beyond our awareness. Because after all, ignorance is bliss. Maybe that is the message all along, that evil has always existed and will continue to exist unceasingly, no matter how hard you try to ignore it. Even if you will yourself into turning a blind eye, bear in mind that just because you are unaware of the presence of evil doesn't invalidate the existence of said evil. And that is the entire story of Butcher's Creek. Bear in mind that all of this is just my personal interpretation of the game. I could just be looking too deep into it. For all I know, this game could just be a cautionary tale of what it feels like to be a degenerate gooner. Thank you to all members of my Patreon, and a special shout out to Oseyeris, Spyro, Otrael, and of course Mouse Mangala and PR in the big boys tier. Share this video, subscribe, and stay tuned to watch me wallow in unceasing madness. If you don't be surprised when you go to a script club to see your grandma.